Hi friends, I'm McLean and welcome to my Crafting Coven Winter Solstice candle painting tutorial. Tonight we're taking simple beeswax tapers and turning them into tiny talismans for the longest night of the year. The kind of candles that don't just sit on a shelf but actually carry your intentions into the returning light. If you're working from the Crafting Coven Winter Solstice craft kit, you'll already have exactly what I'm using here. 6 pure beeswax taper candles, a rainbow of acrylic paints, a whole flock of brushes, and the stencil stickers I designed to make this project more accessible and less fussy. If you've gathered your own candles and paints from your stash, you're absolutely still in the right place. I painted candles freehand for years before I even thought to make stencils, and I'll walk you through options for both. We'll start by marking our candles, placing our stencil, and pressing so that paint doesn't sneak underneath. Then I'll show you how to mix just right gingerbread browns and evergreen greens, and we'll build up 4 full designs together. Gingerbread people and wreaths, mushrooms and winter trees, candy canes and tiny houses, and Dala horses and Scandinavian hearts. This tutorial is meant to be gentle on bodies and brains. We'll work in thin layers. I'll show you how to fix oops moments instead of starting over, and you're always invited to pause the video, take a break, or simplify the details to match your spoons and or skill level. So pour yourself something warm, set up your workspace, and when you're ready, we'll start by marking our candles and placing our first stencil. If you purchase the Crafting Coven Winter Solstice hand-painted beeswax tapers kit, here's what you will receive. A detailed instruction booklet, stencil sheets with 4 of each pattern. It's hard to see them on the page, but I promise they're there. 6 10-inch pure beeswax tapers, 4 in white and 2 in yellow. A set of 12 paintbrushes, a paint palette, and 24 tubes of acrylic paint. I have all my supplies laid out, including a cup of water and a towel to clean my brushes in between paint colors. And now I need to start by placing my first stencil on my candle. If you have the Crafting Coven Winter Solstice kit, your candles will already be marked. If you don't, and you're just following along with materials you already have on hand or materials you've bought on your own, you are going to take any tape measure or ruler. I'm using a fabric tape measure because it's flexible, and you're going to measure 1 inch down from the top. And I like to just place a mark there with a thin Sharpie. And again, if you're using the kit, all of these stencils that I designed were sent to you. So I'm just going to peel off one of my stencils, and I'll line up the top of my stencil with the line that I made that's 1 inch down. Try to place my stencil kind of straight-ish, and then I'll work one side first, pressing it down as I roll outwards, trying to get the stencil as flush as possible with no bubbles. There'll be some little bubbles and stuff, but just do your best trying to roll that out. And then I'll go and work on the other side, and they should meet up pretty closely. Each candle is a tiny bit different, so sometimes, like on this candle, you can see it doesn't line up perfectly towards the bottom because this candle is just slightly fatter on the bottom than the candle I used to measure to make these stencils, but that's close enough, and we'll just be careful down here not to get any paint in this open seam. So now I'm just going around and I'm really pressing down on my stencil. I want this stuck as closely to the candle as possible so that no paint can get up underneath the stencil. We can clean that up later, but it's always nice to just prevent that as much as possible at the beginning. So now that I have, you can see here one of the stickers stayed on when I peeled this off the sticker paper. So I'm just going to peel that off. Each sheet has 2 stencils on it. So obviously this is the gingerbread and wreath stencil, and there's another one on here. You can do this craft without these stencils, and in fact that's what I did for years. All of these candles were painted freehand, just eyeballing the placement of each motif. I actually didn't figure out to even make stencils to make placement easier until I decided to offer this as a Crafting Coven kit, and I felt like sending people the beeswax candles, the paint, and the paintbrushes wasn't enough to really make this accessible to all skill levels. And because I have a Silhouette Cameo cutting machine, I already use that for a lot of things, and I already have this sticker paper. It was kind of an aha moment to just design stencils, which is great for me because now in the future, it's gonna save me a ton of time. And currently it means that it's making this craft a little more accessible. With the caveat that I've designed all my stencils to mimic the way I like to paint candles with repeating motifs. I pick 2 different motifs per candle and then I repeat them all the way around, and it's pretty heavy on the decoration. If you want to just paint a candle with like 1 sprig of greenery or something like that, you totally can, and obviously you wouldn't need the stencils for that. So we have our stencil on our candle. Now we need to paint. So to start, I'm gonna pick my base colors, because what I'm gonna do is just get 1 layer of color, go back, get a 2nd layer of color. Then while the paint is still wet, I will peel the stencil off and then go in and fine tune the details. For the brown of my gingerbread, I use a little bit of burnt sienna. I'll mix in some raw umber. Basically did 2 parts raw umber to 1 part burnt sienna. And with the back of this paintbrush, I'm going to mix that up, and that to me looks pretty gingerbready. I'm happy with that, so that's what I'll go ahead and use. To lay that down, again, since I have this stencil, it makes it a lot easier to get the first color on. I'm going to use this flat brush, and just starting at the top, I'll gently push the color onto the candle all the way around. Get a little more paint, do that for the next gingerbread person, and the next one. I'm going back and taking a little of the paint off of the first 2 as I run out of paint on my paintbrush. You want to do multiple thin layers as opposed to 1 thick layer. I've just found it gives a better result. Okay, I have 3 more. And now I'll set this paintbrush aside. So there I have some phthalo green. The colors in this particular paint set are a little off from the standard. Phthalo green is usually a little more evergreen than that. So let's add a little bit of emerald. If you have different paint, you'll want to mix different colors, whatever looks best to your eye. Now I've added a little bit of sap green, and I'm going to mix these together and see what I think. Let me test that on my stencil. So let me add some light green and some medium yellow. I'm going to add a little bit more and a bit of yellow ochre to get more of a muted olivey color. Yep. That's exactly what I want. I'll be painting 4 different candles tonight, and at least 1 other design also uses green, so I'll end up using this up by the end of this tutorial. So with another flat brush, pick up some green and start working it into the wreath shapes on my stencil. Doing a really light layer to start, and then we'll come back and do a 2nd layer. And down here is where our stencil didn't quite match up, so I'll just be a little more careful as I'm pushing my paint onto the stencil to not accidentally go in the cracks of the seam. And then while the green wreath color is drying, I'll come back in with my gingerbread color and do another layer. And then I'll come back in with my green and do another very thin layer of the green. You want to peel your stencil off while your paint is still wet. If you leave the stencil on until your paint is dry, you'll just pull the paint off with your stencil. I'm using my fingernail to get up the corners of my stencil, and I'm just working my way down, peeling up all the corners. And now I will just carefully peel my stencil off, and then we'll clean up any mistakes. Okay, so there's my stencil. I suppose you could try to reuse these. I haven't. I just throw this away, but you could try to reuse this if you wanted. So now at this point, we have a base for our designs, but you can see there are definitely some areas where paint got under the stencil that needs to be tidied up. And to do that, I'm using this little needle tool that I got in a miniatures kit. You can also use your fingernail or a sewing needle, but I'm gonna go in with this. It's easier to do once your paint has dried, but the paint does dry pretty quickly. So I'll go in with this and just clean up all my edges. And then I'll come back and put a 3rd coat of paint. And as I'm doing that 3rd coat of paint, that'll help me refine the outlines to be tidier. Okay, I'm happy happy with that. It still looks a little messy, but I can continue refining as I go. And again, if at any point you make a mistake, if your paint is still wet, you can usually just wipe it off either with your finger or Q-tip. And if it's dry, you can scrape it off with your fingernail or a needle. So now I'll take one of my smaller brushes. I'm using a 00 here, and I'll just go back and go over each of my gingerbread men, and then I'll take another 00 and go over each of my wreaths with one more base color, and then we can come back and do our details. And this is my opportunity to refine any outlines that didn't come out as crisp as I would have liked from the stencil. Okay, I need to pause for a second. This is really difficult for me to see. I usually use a magnifying lamp for all of my crafting. I need to grab my magnifying lamp. I will try to keep this mostly out of the frame, but I can't see these tiny details without this guy. Much better. Hopefully y'all can still see. I'm actually going to take a 000 for my wreaths instead of a 00. And I like to put a little bit of texture in my wreaths at this point. You could even come in with a second green and add a bunch of little needle looking details. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you don't want to fill in your wreaths completely, and I'm sorry, I meant to mention this when I was showing you the stencil. So let me set this aside to dry for a second. So while your stencil is on your candle, you can just do the outside edge of the wreath if you want a hole in the middle. I forgot to mention that. And I made another example where I did that. So you see how there's a hole in the middle of the wreath? So that's an option too. And in that case, you would just take your green paint and only go around the outside edge instead of filling in the whole shape. I hope that makes sense. I also forgot to mention that you can just stand your candle up like that to dry. If you're using candles from the kit, they have flat bases. Now that our base layers are dry, I am going to come in and do some detail designs. And for that, I will need red and white. So let's start with a little bit of cadmium red and some alizarin crimson. And the white's easy, we're just gonna use white. And I am using a bigger tube of white because I am trying to use it up. So let's mix up our red and see if it's what we want. That looks pretty good. So now with my 0 paintbrush, I'll go in and do all of the red on my wreaths. So I just made a mistake. Happens to me a lot. I still have some motor skill issues from the stroke I had a few years ago. I'm just gonna take a piece of tissue and wipe it off, and then I'll fold my tissue, get it wet with a little bit of my paint water, and wipe it the rest of the way off. Alternatively, I could have left it to dry and then come and scraped it off with my fingernail or my tool. The paint is just sitting on top of the wax, so you can pretty easily scrape it off at any time after you've painted these. So you'll need to be a little bit careful with them. You could seal them, like you could melt another candle, you could melt some wax and paint the wax over it to seal them if you want. I don't do that because it's an extra step and I don't feel like it, but you absolutely could do that to better seal in your designs. But otherwise, just be careful because like you saw, just wiping off that mistake paint wiped off a little tiny bit of my wreath. So let me come back in my green and fix that part of the wreath, and then I'll skip this bow for now and I'll come back and do it after I've done these other wreaths. And okay, so this is wet paint, so as I turn this to hold this, I'm going to be careful not to accidentally hold it where there's wet paint. And I will often rest the base of my candle on my work surface as I'm working. Oops, and I see another little bit of green that got knocked off, so let me fix that. And by the time I get down to this wreath, that should have dried enough for me to put the red details on there. So let me continue putting the details on my wreath. Now that I finished this side, I'm gonna flip it back over, and this should be dry enough to do the bow. And the rest of this should already be dry. So I'll go and do a second layer anywhere that is still sort of transparent, which will be most of the bows. And then I'll go do that on the other side, because by the time I'm done with this, the other side should be dry. Now all the red is done on my wreaths. So I'm gonna come back and put a little bit of white in, just as those 3 dots. So I'll do that real quick on all the wreaths. By the time I'm done with that, the red part should be dry enough that I can switch the way I'm holding things and work on my gingerbread men without messing up what I've already done on the wreaths. For the gingerbread men, I could do all white, but because I already have my red out and because I already have red on the wreath, I think I'll do red buttons on his chest. And then for the white, I'll make his face and I'll do lines on the arms and legs. So I'm working with white right now, so let me go ahead and do that. Whew, these details are tiny. Let's give him his buttons. The red isn't showing up as much as I would like on the gingerbread guy, so set my candle up, grab this vermilion again, tiny bit up there. That's really orange. What else do we have? Yeah, cadmium. Well, that's still really orange. Well, let's see. Maybe it's not really that orange and it just is looking kind of orange to me right now. That's much better. See the difference from the top one and the middle one? That is much better contrast. And there is our gingerbread and wreath candle done. Okay, let's move on to our next candle stencil. This one is mushrooms and evergreens. So just like we did with the first one, we will line up the top of the stencil with the mark we made. That's 1 inch down from the top of the candle. Pull that down the bottom. I don't know if I did this one straight. So the way you can check that is just look at the top. I'm just wrapping the top part. Yep, that's not straight. If you've ever gotten acrylic nails with nail forms, this kind of reminds me of that. Yeah, much better. So I'm gonna do one side, other side. I accidentally creased it right there, but that's okay because I don't need this part. I'm not gonna paint right there. And it did mess up the bottom of this mushroom a little bit, but that's okay. I can compensate for that. Same thing with this one. I can compensate for that. Because I really walked you through a lot of the techniques on the first one, I think I'm actually going to time lapse most of this one. And while I'm time lapsing, I'll do a voiceover and talk to you a little bit about why we celebrate mushrooms and evergreen trees during the winter holidays in many cultures around the world. So I'll walk you through real quick what I'm planning to do, because I'm planning to use all the same colors that I used on the last candle and that I already have out. I'm gonna add a little more brown to this one, have a little less gingerbread color. But first I will paint all of the evergreen trees the green that I already have out, and then I'll go in, actually let me give myself a lighter brown for the base of the mushrooms. That's pretty yellow. Let's see, so that's some yellow ochre, which I will add a little burnt umber to, and some white, and let's see what we get. Grabbing some more white from over here just because I already had it out. That is a great mushroom brown. So I'll use that color for the base of my mushrooms. I'll use this red that we already have for the tops of my mushrooms. And once I get 2 thin layers on, I'll pull my stencil off while my paint is still wet. And then I'll go in and add brown trunks to all of my evergreens, white dots to my mushrooms, and some red ornaments to my trees. And you know what might be fun? Put a little bit of yellow right here. I'm going to try to add a yellow star to the tops of all my trees. I don't know if I can do a star this tiny, so I might just do a yellow circle at the top. We'll see. But I am going to time lapse all of that so that I can tell you a story while you're watching me paint. In winter, we reach for symbols that remind us life hasn't disappeared. It's simply resting. Evergreen trees have carried that meaning for centuries, staying green through snow and cold, their branches brought indoors at midwinter as a promise that warmth would return. And then there's the Amanita muscaria, the red-capped mushroom of winter forests and folk art. Growing alongside evergreen trees and appearing in documented shamanic traditions of northern Eurasia, it became part of winter's visual language, a quiet reminder that mystery and magic still linger beneath the trees. Okay, there is the completed mushroom evergreen candle. And I did get little stars. Our next candle design is candy canes and houses, and you can see I've already used one of the stencils from this page. Oops, one of my candy canes is trying to come with the stencil. Oh, I guess this is a good time to mention, these essentially turn into little stickers. So if you wanted to, you could do a reverse technique and put the stickers on. Or actually another option that I was thinking would be really cute, if you just wanted these candles to be decorative, if you weren't going to burn them, you could decorate the stickers themselves, like with gel pens or markers or whatever, and then just stick the stickers on however you want. But if you do that, please do not burn the candles, because this is paper with a plastic adhesive backing. So just like with the first two, I will line the top of the stencil up with my mark that's 1 inch down, and then try to get it kind of straight. Check just the top if you want. That's looking pretty good. So let me work this side and this side. I almost got it lined up perfectly, but my bottom house is a little off. That's okay. I am in a huge gingerbread mood this year. I'm doing gingerbread everything for all my gifts. I'll have another video where I show you these little paper gingerbread ornaments I'm making for my friends and family this year. But even though we already did a gingerbread person on our first candle, I'm gonna do a gingerbread house on this candle. I painted another one as my tester, and I painted it just like a little cottage, but this one I'm vibing with a gingerbread house. So I will mix some more paint for my gingerbread house. I'll need more white. I'll mix a brighter red for my candy canes. So yeah, so I'll paint the gingerbread color on the houses. I'll paint all the candy canes red. And then once I take my stencil off, clean everything up, do a second layer, I'll come back and paint white lines on the red candy canes and white details on the gingerbread house. And again, I'm gonna do that on time lapse because in the first tutorial, I kind of explained the techniques, and this will give me the opportunity to do a voiceover and talk to you about gingerbread and candy canes and why they are associated with this season. Gingerbread and candy canes became holiday symbols through tradition, not accident. Gingerbread was shaped and decorated for celebrations as early as the Tudor court, and candy canes trace back to European church traditions, where simple sugar sticks, later flavored with peppermint, became part of the season's visual language of comfort and ritual. Okay, well, teeny tiny gingerbread houses are really hard to paint, but it's okay. I think it turned out okay. And that is our finished gingerbread house and candy cane candle. For our final design of this tutorial, I am going to use a yellow beeswax candle. If you bought the Crafting Coven Winter Solstice kit, you got 2 natural yellow candles and then 4 natural white candles. So for this design, I pulled from my Scandinavian heritage, and we are going to do Dala horses and hearts, and then I'm going to attempt, just let me get this little Dala horse off. I'm going to attempt to make the hearts look like the Scandinavian red and white paper hearts. So just like all the other ones, we'll start by lining up our stencil to the line we made 1 inch down, and then we'll try to put this on straight. We'll work from one side, getting the stencil as flat as possible, and And we'll work the other side. Hope they meet up in the right spot. Hey, not bad. Okay, so for this one, I am going to paint both the Dala horses and the hearts red. And then when the paint is still wet, I will take my stencil off. I'll clean up the edges, just like I do every time. I'll go in and add another layer of red if I need to, if it needs one more layer. And then I will go in with white. And on the horses, since they're so tiny, I'm just gonna do a little tiny heart in the middle and a little tiny bridle. And then on the hearts themselves, I'll go back over and paint white right here. And then I'll do like a little checkered pattern to try to get the look of the folded paper. And then I'll put white up here at the top for the little hanging loop that's usually on those. And I will do this one on time lapse as well. And I will tell you a little bit more about the history of the Dala horse and the Scandinavian paper hearts. Dala horses and woven paper hearts come from Scandinavian winter folkways shaped by long nights and midwinter rites. The Dala horse was carved during winter as a charm of protection and good fortune, often made by firelight. Paper hearts were woven and hung during Yule and winter celebrations, small handmade spells of love and light meant to warm the home and carry hope through the darkest days. And there is my finished Scandinavian Dala horse paper hearts candle. All right, friends, that's our winter solstice candle painting session. By now you should have at least one finished candle or maybe a whole constellation of gingerbread people, wreaths, tiny houses, candy canes, evergreen trees, and Dala horses, all carrying your time and intention into the darkest part of the year. Remember, these don't have to be perfect to be powerful. Every wobbly stripe and lopsided motif is proof that a real human with a real body and real limits sat down and made something on purpose. That in itself is a kind of magic. If you're using these for a ritual or seasonal altar, I'd love for you to take a moment when you light them and notice how the designs blur and glow as the wax warms. And if you're gifting them, maybe tuck in a note about the symbols and what they mean to you. If you want to keep crafting together, you can join our crafting coven for a whole year of seasonal kits, or just come back to this tutorial anytime you have another set of tapers to play with. You can also rewatch any section or adapt the designs to fit your own traditions. Thank you for spending your spoons and your creativity with me. May your winter solstice be gentle, your candles burn safely, and your returning light be exactly the size you need it to be. Between the worlds and at your work table, blessed winter solstice and happy crafting. Hey, Editing McLean here. Instead of ending the video there, I actually did an in-person crafting coven a couple of days ago, so I thought it might be fun to end the video with a little POV from the Crafting Coven event. Enjoy!